There are 5 beginner mistakes that can wreck your day before you even hit mile 2, and almost every new backpacker makes at least one of them. Most of them totally preventable. So let's start with the first one. One of the biggest problems beginner backpackers run into is starting a trip with gear that's perfect for car camping, but completely out of place for backpacking. And the mindset is kind of like, well, I've done car camping before, so now I just need to carry all that stuff on my back. And with that approach, you'll see folks bringing out that frying pan or that axe that they're used to chopping firewood with. And in my early days, I was bringing out canned soup, a propane stove, a multi-tool, plus a knife. One time I even brought out a machete. And that kind of gear can be totally fun when you have a car to carry it in with you. But when you're backpacking, that kind of weight and bulk just doesn't work once it all gets loaded on your back. And especially once you get past miles 2 or 3. The shift that makes everything easier is choosing gear that's built with backpacking in mind. Items that pack smaller, weigh less, and serve a specific need for your trip instead of just being nice to have. And one of the best ways to ensure that the gear you're bringing is optimized for backpacking is to follow an established gear checklist. I'll link mine below. It's free and it lays out exactly what works on the trail and saves you from the trial and error phase that I went through in my early trips. Another mistake that makes backpacking feel way harder than expected is starting a trip with gear and systems that haven't been used or tested beforehand. And this can be anything from not breaking in new shoes or learning how to adjust a hip belt to figuring out a sleep system that actually feels comfortable at the end of a long day. Most beginners walk into their first few trips without much familiarity with any of this, and the learning curve hits at the worst possible time, when the body is exhausted from hiking, daylight is fading, and the brain now has to piece together unfamiliar tasks in an environment that already feels new and a little stressful. And even simple things like anchoring tent stakes, managing clean and dirty water while filtering, or just knowing where the heck to put everything can feel surprisingly complicated when it hasn't been practiced. And that trial and error phase adds up. The tent takes longer to pitch, the water filter setup can feel awkward, packing up in the morning becomes a slow routine of hunting for small items and trying to remember where everything goes. And by midday, all those little delays turn into less energy on trail and less margin for everything else the day wants to throw at you. And a lot of what I cover on this channel is meant to help cut down on that early frustration. Feel free to subscribe so you don't miss the next set of upgrades. Ultimately, the best advice I can give is to use your entire backpacking system at least once before your first trip. A night of car camping with your backpacking gear is ideal, but even just pitching your tent in your backyard or a local park can make a huge difference. Once the systems feel familiar, the whole experience smooths out and backpacking becomes far less about fighting that learning curve and far more about actually enjoying the miles. And the next mistake is the one that catches people completely off guard on their first trip. Cold mornings in the backcountry have a way of convincing you to stay bundled up longer than you should. You're making breakfast, wearing that warm puffy or that cozy fleece, the cold bite of the morning air still lingering, and when it comes time to throw on the pack and hit the trail, it feels natural to just leave those insulating layers on. The problem is that those insulating layers that feel warm and cozy during your first few steps on the trail can quickly become hot and suffocating as your body temperature rises and the sun starts peeking out over the trees, especially if you hit an uphill portion. For this reason, I always start my hikes in the morning a little colder than feels ideal, and usually after 5 to 10 minutes, I end up feeling just fine as my body warms up. Now, if you like keeping some extra layers on when you start your hike on cold mornings, there's nothing wrong with that as long as you shed those layers when you start heating up. The problem is keeping those layers on and just marching on until suddenly it's 2 p.m. in the afternoon and you notice that your shirt is completely drenched in sweat as temps rise throughout the day. Shedding those extra layers early keeps your base layers dry and saves you from that mid-morning heat buildup that just wears you down. And I'd love to know, what's one small fix that made backpacking feel way easier for you once you figured it out? Drop it down in the comments. A pattern that shows up on a lot of beginner trips is ignoring small discomforts that start creeping up because they don't feel like a big deal yet. And these things often happen early in the day's hike. The body's settling in, the pace feels steady, and it's easy to shrug off the early signs that something is starting to drift in the wrong direction. One of the obvious ones is what we just discussed, your body starting to overheat. And another common one is feeling hot spots in your feet, the precursor to blisters. Or inefficient calorie or water intake is another example. Knowing when to stop and take a break to refresh and refuel is one of those things that beginners, intermediates, and even experts can misjudge without realizing it. Powering through when the body is telling you it needs rest can impact fatigue and morale the longer the day goes on. The fix is to treat those early signals as a cue to make small adjustments instead of waiting for the real problem to show up. A quick pause to drink some water, snack a little bit, adjust your shoes, or cool down for a minute keeps the day on track. Those small corrections made early keep the day from snowballing into problems that take way more time and energy to fix later on. When you're new to backpacking, it's easy for the days to get a little behind schedule. Maybe the pace was slower on the climbs, or maybe the morning just started a bit later, or perhaps the heat took more out of the group than expected. Next thing you know, the sun's already starting to set and you still have a mile or two to go. Suddenly the day shifts from relaxed to rushed, and the whole tone of the evening changes. Not only that, but when you're new, setting up camp takes more time than people expect. The tent has to go up, the water needs to be found and treated, dinner has to be made, food and smellables need to be stored properly, and all the gear that exploded out of the pack now needs to be put back into some kind of order before the next morning. None of these steps are complicated on their own, but when you're suddenly trying to rush them as the light fades and the temps drop, the whole process can get harder than it needs to be. That's why allowing yourself an extra buffer of time to get to your campsite can make a big difference. I usually recommend that beginners aim to arrive at camp at least 2 hours before sunset. That gives you plenty of time to set everything up and get organized while you still have daylight. Plus, maybe some time to just kind of explore around your campsite a bit. And ending the day with some daylight left keeps things calm and gives your body a chance to wind down instead of pushing through the last tasks while you're already drained. And all of these adjustments work the same way. They keep backpacking from feeling harder than it needs to be. And if you've ever wondered why the first day of a backpacking trip hits so hard for new backpackers, this next video explains why day one drains your energy so fast and how to fix it before your next trip. So thanks for watching, enjoy your next trip, and I'll see you on the trail.